Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session is about confusion and issues related to division in stages. I hope and expect by the end of this session, you would be able to understand how and why there are certain confusions and issues related to the divisions of periods in the history of English language when it is studied from historical perspective. Well, my dear students, there are many books and many websites describing the journey of English language through the times. There are different sources of periodicals, of journals, of encyclopedias, of books, of edited books, etc., that provide us, and even there are surveys that provide us, information regarding the development and changes in English language from the time of its origins till today. However, if we closely look at all these sources of information in this regard, actually each of these texts provides data with varied purposes. There is a huge variety. There is a lot of diversity in the kind of materials that these books, that these periodicals or these journals provide. And why it is so? Because they are written for various purposes. The purpose or the aim of writing a particular piece of writing actually determines its nature. Also, because they are written for varied intended readerships. Some are written for the readers who are experts by themselves in the field. Some are written for who are trying to seek some basic knowledge about or some basic information about the topics. Some are written for academic purposes. Some are written for, those who are more interested in the historical perspective. Some are written for those who just want to have a general idea of what happened to the language. So, it varies from the perspective of readership. Also, geographically, the readership varies, from one place to the other. And if you look at all these materials, they are written at different time points in the history. So even in terms of the timeline, the readership varied. As far as the format or the pattern or the writing style is concerned, of course, different patterns are adopted, different formats, according to the purpose and according to the intended readership are adopted. The result is what? The result is some of them follow even the minute details of, the changes that have taken place over the times in the English language. Whereas there are certain that are just, probably single-page works, for example, single-page websites that would just provide a more like an outline for, indicating the basic changes. So what we are left with? We are left with the question, after reading one of these works, do we really need another? Because, there is such a huge variety. So, till this point, what I've tried to establish is that it is significant to study the history of English language, but, in what ways it is to be studied, how the divisions are to be made, etc., is still a question. And, we need to trace the development of English language from one stage to the other as students of the history of English language so that we could understand how the characteristics at one stage shifted or changed as language moved from one time to the other. Thus, the question that we need to ponder over is how to study English language. Should we follow a particular system? Well, different linguists have given different systems. Should we follow a particular division? As students of the history of English language, should there be a particular, division that we should follow? Well, the development of English language from its Indo-European origins through Old English times to the Middle English times, leading towards early modern English and then late modern English times, this is the general sequence of divisions that most of the linguists have made. Also, many of them have looked at it, synchronically by looking at it as English today. There are many other aspects that we need to consider when we decide how to make the divisions and how to look at it. For example, the aspects that need to be considered include creation of new words, language geography, English as a global language, technical and historical terms, etc. A question: how far the study of English language through division in stages is possible and beneficial? Well, there is no definitive answer to that, but I think by bifurcating it into pieces can help us have a better understanding. The general division that has been agreed upon by almost all the linguists is of division into three, that is Old English, Middle English, and Modern English. However, within this, sometimes further divisions are made. For example, even within Old English, sometimes some references are made to pre-Old English as well. And as far as Modern English is concerned, by most of the linguists, it is divided into two categories: Early Modern English and Late Modern English. So, we can have this Early and Late Modern English division as another division as well. However, there are different perspectives. Here, as an example, I would just share Baugh's perspective on that. According to him, the evolution of English in the 1500 years of its existence in England has been an unbroken one. What he's trying to prove is that on the timeline, there are no barriers, and we cannot as such cut it into pieces to make it, different separate parts or divisions. However, he says within this development, it is possible to recognize three main stages. And as I have earlier said, that Old, Middle, and Modern English are the three general stages agreed upon. So Baugh also says that from 450 to 1150 makes the Old English period. From 1150 to 1500 is the period that is generally called Middle English period, whereas the language since 1500 is called Modern English. However, he asserts that all divisions in the history, and like all other divisions apart from the history of language as they are made, the periods of the English language are matters of convenience, and dividing lines between them are purely arbitrary. Within each of these periods, it is possible to recognize certain broad characteristics and certain special developments that took place during that time.